important that the community understand as well what is going on here. And so, the first item that we'd like you to update us on is the Board of Education Technology Audit. What you did, the update, and whatever.
Sure.
Turn it over to you.
No. First and foremost, thank you very much for having this joint meeting. I will take the microphone. Thank you for meeting with us today. This just shows another sign of the collaboration that the Board of Ed is willing with the Board of Aldermen and reciprocate that in a way that we can best suit the needs of our city. So in preparation of the agenda, we were able to address all the items on the agenda in the order that they are presented. And I'd first like to just talk about the Board of Ed technology audit. So we had recently had an audit done of our entire system to kind of find out where we stood in terms of necessary upgrades. There's been quite some time since we have done significant upgrades to the system in itself, as well as some security aspects within the Shelton Public Schools, as cybersecurity becomes, so important and paramount in today's day and age, especially when we're dealing with student records. So we had a company come in, ChimeNet, who came in and did a very thorough, in-depth study of all of our buildings, all of our cables and how things are hooked up, the Wi-Fi infrastructure where they do heating, and they do that, and they gave us a very, very comprehensive
David Gidwani.
Join the meeting.
It's a document that was provided to us that's over 100 pages long that I, one, do not have for you this evening, and I'll explain as to why. And two, it's very, very complex in terms of with its technological jargon that I'm sure many of us, really it would be above in terms of our understanding in terms of the specific needs of the district. But it would not be a document that we present at a meeting like this because then it becomes public record. And because of the security nature in terms of what would be happening to our school system to upgrade the cybersecurity, if we presented the actual document, it would be subject to FOI, in which people would see that. It would compromise the whole purpose of why we had the audit. Most importantly, what we learned about it is our school system has seriously needed an upgrade to meet the needs of the 21st century and to meet the needs of the ever-growing population in terms of technology. And this audit was able to really pinpoint what we can do immediately to meet the growing needs of the capability of instruction by our educators and also the learning aspect for our students themselves.
No, I'm just letting John listen.
Oh, that's fine. So with that being said, we had an estimated cost of the work that needed to be done initially at about $1.5 million. We were happy when we got back the estimated cost of this work to be slightly under 1.2, with the concept and the possibility of applying for an E-rate reimbursement once we paid the money in full, which would give the total cost of the entire upgrade as $113,078.14. And I do have these cost figures. I have handouts for everyone present so they can see this and follow along. Where we are in terms of the school system and to implement this, we have received, as I'm sure you're well aware, grant funding that has helped subsidize in terms of the pandemic situation and COVID loss, and any type of technology upgrades absolutely would fall in the parameters for the grant. So this entire cost, which was originally projected as a capital project for the city over the course of 5 years, can totally be absorbed in the new grant that we will be receiving from the federal government, which alleviates the burden from our city and the taxpayers to do this necessary audit. So I'd like to pass out 2 documents to everyone, and it kind of goes hand in hand with number 1 and number 2, where Mr. President Inglese had talked about the audit update. The first sheet's the audit update. The second one is the technology plan, because I don't think we can talk about the audit and what it's going to do without talking about the plan in itself. So please allow me to just pass it.
You want me to pass it?
What do you want to do?
Give him some.
Well, I know this
We'll
one.
just take one and pass it, take one and pass it around.
Thank you, Rick. Just keep one, pass the rest.
I'm sorry I got late into the meeting due to tech issues. Who is speaking before we just paused?
This is Ken Saranich, the superintendent.
Thank you, Ken.
I have one, John, thank you very much.
Here's page 2, if anyone didn't get page 2.
I'm gonna pull the extras so that
Please do. Then you can have it for your record. Yep. Here, I'll just,
Thank you, Ken. Thank you very much.
Did you get page 2?
I got number 2, thank you, Richard.
So I already referred to the fiscal obligations that came up with the audit, and that's the first page that you'll see this particular chart here. That's the actual breakdown of the cost to implement all this work, which would be upgrading our Wi-Fi system, which will be upgrading the cabling that's done. It's really, and what everyone needs to understand, this is so necessary, and I'll equate it to things that we understand all the time. We all in our home have Wi-Fi. We all get frustrated when the Wi-Fi drops in our home, and we can no longer watch our TV channels or play our games or do whatever we're doing at home. Our school system operates under the same concept where we have Wi-Fi to deliver instruction. We're doing it through Promethean boards, we're doing it through Chromebooks, and that particular Wi-Fi system is set up with hotspots throughout the buildings, but they're set up in buildings that are made of steel and concrete. So the more devices that we put in and the more strain that it puts on the system, the less likely the signal weakens over time, as well as many of these buildings were wired years ago, and just the better quality wiring that you can put in, the faster connections and cabling you go to stream the system. And although speed is an asset that we all like, and I'll refer back to like when we watch television and our Wi-Fi, we want a clear picture to come up. It's not just about the speed, but the delivery of content. When you're talking about the number of data points that we're talking about, with all the students in the system and the teachers operating at the same time, talking about subjects and homework and video stream and everything, that's a lot of content being pushed through out-of-date wiring. So by upgrading all these systems and firming up the security, we've seen far too often in corporations, business, and municipalities where people are subject to cyber attacks. Then they put out ransoms, which indebt organizations and municipalities to pay this ransom. We see the effects of the gas line that just happened up. We don't want our school system or our city to be affected by that. So of course we need to upgrade as necessary in any organization to secure security, which costs money to do. All of that is going to be covered within the cost that you see outlined at the beginning, which is the total estimated cost of $1.2 million. I'll round up in this figure here. But as we do annually, we can apply for an E-rate reimbursement once we've paid in the full cost. That E-rate reimbursement will bring us back funding to give the grand total that will be out of pocket for Shelton would be this $813,000.
No. Yeah.
$813,000, yeah, and change. With that being said, our proposal on the Board of Ed is that we are going to use our funding that we're getting through federal grants to cover this cost. So in no way, shape, or form, this necessary work will be a burden on the taxpayers. So what will it provide us? Well, let's look at page 2, the second sheet. Some of you have been familiar with this document as you've worked with the Board of Ed over years. It's modified over time, but what you're seeing in front of you is what we've worked on as what we refer to as the 5-year technology plan. We all know technology dates itself quickly. You buy your phone and automatically you're seeing advertisements for the next model before you even got home. We live in a world of technology and need to stay current, and we need to refresh, and we need to replace very out-of-date equipment. If you look at the color coding on this particular chart, by using the grant funding and aligned with what we've learned from the technology audit, we have already had plans and projections to cover costs that are going to go all the way into 2023, 2024 that would normally be a capital project that the city would have to invest in. We're going to supplement those funds through our grant, again, alleviating the cost and burden on the city's taxpayers by utilizing the grant money that the city was already aware of when we developed this 5-year plan. So this is the Board of Ed's willing to meet the city's, address the needs of the Board of Ed, work with the city on, the tax burden that they have to cover, and utilize the grants that we can get, which would all qualify in the system because technology upgrades, as we learned through the pandemic with the COVID relief funding, covers distance learning, which goes under any technology upgrades that we want to do in our system. So that's part, and then what I'm hoping to do as we get through all 5 pieces in the handouts that we have, we'd like to paint a picture for the Board of Aldermen of the total cost savings as a whole, with this being one part of multiple steps in this grant process. But that covers 1 and 2. And Mr. Iglesias, do you want me to go through all the items so that we can see the whole picture before we entertain questions, or how would you like?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go to the next agenda item, which is the ESSER 2 grant fund utilization. You're welcome. So a document is being passed out to you.
I know, right?
So used to it.
Which includes
Thank you.
the cost that we used with our second grant that we received from the federal government, referred to as ESSER 2, and it was approximately $2 million. That money had been budgeted and spent by the Board of Education, and this breakdown that you're seeing here is how the Board of Education determines that money would be spent. There were 3 areas that we could spend the money in: teaching and learning, technology, and then facilities. Again, all related to a degree on how it would be associated with COVID relief, how it would be associated with impact from the pandemic. But what I want the Board of Aldermen to see is, if you look at this chart, we've spent every penny we budgeted for the items that are listed on the far left of the graph. But with that being said, we received this particular grant after we had submitted by charter date our Board of Ed approved request for funding. So we had to follow the charter date, which was February 15th, was that? Yeah. And then this money was received to the board after that date. Mm-hmm. So we were able to utilize that funding and then supplement and take off some of the money that we had in our initial request to the city. So already with our request that we gave to the mayor by the February deadline, we already utilized this $2 million grant to kind of decrease that. So when we did that, you'll see the breakdown in either whether it's reducing our general budget request, reducing off the technology plan, or reducing off of our capital request. All those monies total, where the $2 million were taken in some area relative to our initial budget request that we made to the city. And that covers our ESSER 2 grant. The next topic, and then we're going to go through all of these together, which in the final sheet. The next topic is the building reimbursements. One of the major goals that this Board of Education wanted to accomplish upon their election was to close out the outstanding building reimbursements that were owed to the city. I am happy to say that officially all 4 projects have been closed and submitted to the city. In working together as a board and the cabinet, when I became superintendent as of January 1st, I made it a priority item to close all of them out. We immediately closed out 3 of them, and then closed out our final one. We were missing some documents just last week. Why this is key for the city, because we're all working together as a community here, is the total number of reimbursement that the city will receive that was owed to the taxpayers in the city based on the outstanding reimbursement. I have to get my glasses. Ugh. It's all numbers.
Oh, we're all there. Gotta find a bigger printer.
So if you can, see the numbers to the far right, you'll see the reimbursement received to date. So that's the total closeout reimbursement and the estimated reimbursement, to be received. So you're gonna see the total funding that will be allocated to the city now that those outstanding building projects have been closed out. And Rick, I know you know this, can you just refer, what total funding has already been received to the city? Because I know there has been, but I don't know that dollar amount.
Sure. The next to the last column includes both, prior reimbursements that were done 5 years ago, 7 years ago, but the ones that really have been brought up to date are, the high school code compliance sprinklers. We got a couple $100,000 in about a month ago. The city finance department received it, and that $413,000 represents the total now. So that project is done, subject to a final paper audit that the state's going to do. In addition, the Elizabeth Shelton project, the bulk of that money that's in the column of reimbursements to date, that the bulk of it did come in recently. It only had a small amount reimbursed previously. Same scenario there, though. That's the final reimbursement subject to the final paper audit. We're waiting on Sunnyside, and you can see the column on the far right, $335,000 is what we're waiting for. That's based on the final EDO 49F closeout paperwork you sent to them. They're in process of reviewing it, and we anticipate getting that before June 30th. Then, as Ken indicated, the last big one was the high school renovation and code compliance project, and we're expecting approximately $2.9 million to come in. We've already received about 5.8. And that 5.8 has been received anywhere from 2008 to 2013, then it stopped. And so this is the first activity on that project since 2013, 2014.
Thanks, Rick.
You're welcome.
So with that being said, I have two final documents that I want to pass out, and these are the most important that kind of ties all this together and kind of paints that picture that I started to at the very beginning. Our goal as the Board of Education in working with the city to meet everyone's needs was to have an understanding that we were very blessed by getting, grant funding under, this situation to help supplement our needs as a school system. We also know that the obligations that the city has done and made towards the growth of our school system as well, whether that be in just the general grant funding or capital projects that they've done. What we're doing as we've received all this grant money have made commitments in several areas with all grant money received to take money off of our general budget requests and money off of capital projects for the city. So we truly are looking at this total funding of grants to be a part of city spending for the Board of Ed, but in light of benefiting the entire city. With that said, I'd like to just share two final documents. So we'll show the first one, and then I'll wrap up with the second one, and then we can answer any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you. There's two.
Sure.
There's two together. Okay.
Yeah, it's stapled.
Okay.
Two stapled.
I think I have more than.
There you go, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
So if you look at this first document, you will see the outline of all the grants that we have received as a school system to date. We have first received the Corona Relief Fund, we received the SR2 grant, and the second sheet just talks about how the SR2 money was spent, if anyone has any questions. You can look at that in your leisure. You saw the breakdown of the SR2, which was that first document, and I had that separate because that was that was an agenda item. And then we realized and recognized that we're going to get what the federal government, the state are referring to as the ARP ESSER, or it goes by many names. The ESSER 3, but it stands for the American Relief Plan. It has been announced that we are aware that total sum that we will receive as a Board of Education, as well as the city will receive their funding, but our funding for the Board of Education is approximately $4.5 million that will be spread over the course of 2 years. So we can spread that money over the course of 2 years. We have yet to receive that funding. We only know the dollar amount. I just recently, as of today, received the first step in the process from the state to start the application process, which is some forms that I need to fill out as superintendent. Once I submit those forms, which the deadline is by May 24th, after May 24th, they will release the application to complete, and then we have 90 days to complete the application before that money would even be received. With that being said, I just want to recognize that that money exists, but it's not money currently to be spent, but it can be budgeted for, and we've already started that process. But when we look at the COVID Relief Fund, ESSER 1, ESSER 2, ESSER 3, as you see on this document, if we include the audit, which was the first document that we said, as taking that with the ESSER 3 money, it'll be a total cost savings on the city of Shelton of $4.4 million. So we are taking $4.4 million with grant funds and alleviating any responsibility from the taxpayers through this grant. These would be one-time purchases, needed purchases as we talk in the technology audit, equipment and supplies, things that we can benefit our school system without burdening the taxpayer or raising taxes in any way, shape, or form. So the subsequent columns breaks it down into which area that we get the 4.4, but as you can see, this is our Board of Education working with the Board of Aldermen to say that we've received this grant money and we would like to commit this $4.4 million back to the city to alleviate any kind of budgeting that the aldermen will have to do now or in the future towards the Board of Education. That leaves the last document that I'm going to share, and it ends up with our confirmed budgetary needs. Thanks, sir.
Yeah, one of the groups.
We need one of those. Let's finger cut.
I think I'm part Italian.
It's really hard to do. No, I got one.
Okay, perfect.
So this final sheet that I'm passing out to everyone is kind of like the summary that I just want to end on, and I will gladly entertain any questions, or if my staff or Board of Education want to answer any questions. It really talks about, as President Ingles outlined in number 5, what are our budgetary needs. So when the board and myself presented to you on our first meeting as the Board of Education to the Aldermen at the start of the budgetary process, we talked about the one aspect that we really are looking for the city to support us in. It's the contractual obligations that the Board of Education needs to make. We talked about the possibility. I know President Ingles supported us with that, in terms of the fairness of the contracts and the obligations that we need to make with those. And so what you'll see up here is a breakdown of where we are in the budget. So the line at the top would be the city's funding in terms of the allocated funding that were recommended towards the Board of Education. So our contractual increases are $1.2 million. So if you were to take that off of our total, so if you're looking at the top box, you're working from the bottom up. Our Board of Ed budget that we requested was $45 million. If the Board of Aldermen helps. 74, sorry, my reverse.
I was going to say, yeah, I was like, wait a minute.
For the record, make sure that's correct. 74 million. If the Board of Aldermen assists us in meeting our contractual needs, which is the $1.2 million, that would leave a gap of approximately $1 million. You'll see the $999,722. We, as a Board of Education, have already had a discussion that we believe that we can meet the needs of the $999,722 with the anticipated $4.5 million that we are receiving from the ESSER 3. Now, although we already see that we're going to spend that on the technology audit, we'll still have a good portion of that money retained to meet budget for the year in working with the city by meeting the contractual needs. And why that 1.2 is important when we talk about contractual needs is because we can't utilize the grants for contractual pieces, for employment, for standing employment is not eligible with the grant. And without making those contractual obligations, there will be cuts that we would have to make within within our board that we would not like to make at this time. You know, so if the city was to able to, so we're reducing our request by covering our requests in grants and asking, you know, the Board of Aldermen to help meet us with the $1.2 million, we can work together to fully fund this year's budget without any cuts and making the best for our city and for our students and our school system. The box underneath is just something as a point of reference as we talk about in the future, and if we talk about the idea that we have grant money and how we can utilize grant money in the future, well, the more that we take grant funding to supplement the general budget, the more we increase in the potential future what we call a financial cliff. So whereas we as a Board of Education requested a 2.99% increase, if we do not supplement or do not reach that budget and utilize grant money to try to supplement general budget, that 2.99 could potentially become a 4% increase 2 years down the road. So I know that's an issue for the future, you know, and not necessarily to be discussed tonight, but I just want to make sure that we make a reference here that although, and it has to go hand in hand with the recognition that, yes, the Board of Ed is receiving grant funding, but the more we supplement grant funding off the general budget, the more we make this financial cliff for the city of Shelton that we all would like to avoid. So we'd like to meet our contractual obligations to work with the Board of Aldermen and utilize this grant funding the best we can to support our school system. And that's all I have to present tonight.
So I'm just curious, I'm assuming the American CARES Act funding is not available for the following year because we hope there's no more pandemic issue. Is that what that is, or am I misunderstanding?
Well, the total that we'll receive now, we can spread over the course of 2 years. But you're taking the total and spreading it out.
Okay.
So we're not anticipating receiving. Yes, we're not anticipating receiving more money on top of the money that.
But is it a potential thing that they may offer more money?
I can't answer that question.
Okay.
That's
None of us can. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I presume that you have this,
John,
you
speak.
can send this.
John, you got to talk louder. People on the phone.
I'm sorry. I presume that you have this electronically. You can send it to the Board of Aldermen clerk.
I'll do that first thing in the morning.
You can get it to the people that are on the phone and who are not at the.
I'll be happy to have my secretary send all this to the clerk tomorrow morning to be available for public record. Yes.
And I presume also that it would be in live streamed, and I hope this got out to the public because I think it's an eye opener. It's a real eye opener. My view, of course, you know, I've always been kind of close to technology, but I understand it's 10, 20 years, you know, we put the first stuff in the schools and put the lighter in now. And so it just, you got to invest. I also want to comment on and thank the Board of Education for their commitment, and Rick for his commitment, and the Superintendent for his commitment to go after and make this a priority to get city reimbursements to work on that. I know.
Taking a
You know,
long
I'm not going to talk about the past, but it was to the point where it was necessary. And it's not, you didn't do it for me, you didn't do it for the Board of Aldermen, you did it for the taxpayers. It's taxpayers' money. And I think we all realize that. And so I appreciate that, and on behalf of the taxpayers, I say thank you. That was well done. And you know, I know you come in with one hand tied behind you. Digging out the information wasn't easy. It was a difficult job. It was done in a relatively short time by comparison to what went on prior to this. I think in total, what you presented tonight is an eye-opener, not only to us, but I think it's an eye-opener also to the general public, to know that that we're doing, that you're doing good things with the money that's been entrusted to you through the American Recovery Act and the ESSR monies. I mean, it put to good use, and it reduced the taxpayers' burden. So it's a win-win. And I'll tell you though, the thing that's really encouraging is the fact that the big winners here are going to be the teachers and students. Really, because it can't get away from it. We gotta do it. It's the future. It's the future, and I'm glad to see it. I mean, I'm just overwhelmed by it personally. And we've got our work cut out for us, but we've already made a few statements, and we're committed to go to work and do what we can. We'll get back to you. Anybody else got any questions?
I just want to say thank you. This was informative as well as beneficial for all of us to understand. Thank you.
Ken, Alderman Gidwani, thank you for that presentation. It was fantastic. Too bad I was not there to see it. But I have a couple questions for you, and if you could answer them, I'd really appreciate it. My first question is, what is the actual enrollment decline in the past few years, and why do you think we have a decline?
So I have enrollment projections that came from 2014 to the present date, and I will say that since 2014 up until 2019, we had a very slim difference in terms of an enrollment decline. From 15 to 16, it was only 22 students. From 18 to 19, enrollment was a difference of 1 student. And in 2019, enrollment was down by 16 students. So in a school system of close to 5,000 students, when you're looking at single digits, that data doesn't factor. We did have an impact, and from last year to this year, our enrollment declined 248 students. And simply stated, as you have all faced as a Board of Aldermen in the city, there are effects from the pandemic. We've all suffered those effects. We as a school system have suffered with enrollment. When the school year began, which I was not the superintendent at the time, but when the school year began, there was a lot of uncertainty of what public school was going to look like. There was an exodus within the public school system. There was a rise into private schools. There were people that homeschooled because of fear of the pandemic. But I'm happy to say that as we've reopened our schools in January 1st, students are coming back. And I anticipate that this blip that we saw of the increase of 248, or the decrease, shall I say, in enrollment between 2019 and 2020, is seriously the impact that we all have felt by the pandemic, and that we will see that number increase from where we currently are for next year. A point to be said with that, when we're talking about financing, though, and I think it's very important, especially as many members of this understand this, working with Financing Board of Education, despite the decrease in our student population, there's been a significant increase since 2014 to 2021 in our special ed population. And we've gone from 12% special ed population to currently at 17% special ed. And the only reason why I bring this up, because I do believe that students are properly identified, and we want to suit and meet the needs of all of our students with disabilities. But those come with a cost. We're talking about specialized instruction. We're talking about technology needs with that we're hoping to be able to accommodate with the grant. But we may have enrollment decreases, but our cost in educating students has not decreased over time.
So the cost has basically gone up.
Like, yeah.
The cost to educate a
Yes,
student.
the cost of educating a student has increased. Yes, if that's the question you're asking, I would say yes.
Okay, so here's my question is, what is the correlation between enrollment decline and staffing? Is there like a ratio that could be applied, like, you know, one staff position for 30 students on a decline? Can you
Well,
just
and I'm gonna,
tell me that, please?
well, I would be happy to speak to that. So, you know, Mrs. Panazzo and I had this discussion, and, you know, she had pointed out that the state of Connecticut requires specialized certification for teachers in specific areas. You know, in grades 7 through 12, you have to be certified in a specific area to teach science, social studies, math. You can't teach all subject areas. So whether you have one student to teach math to or 30 students to teach math to, you still need a math teacher. So the idea that the impact of enrollment means we can cut teachers doesn't equate. We still have to educate our students no matter how many students are in the classroom. And the elementary level, the impact is significant because you have one teacher teaching a group of students. So the more that you have to cut back on students, that larger number of the class size begins. And everyone understands, from parents to educators to politicians, the more direct instruction that we can provide our younger group, the more successful that they can be. So, I mean, if you want to, if I'm answering your question.
No, you are. I really appreciate your answers. You're being very honest. Thank you. I really appreciate it, you know.
I would like to add to that, if you will.
So good evening.
Do you want to take the microphone?
Turn that mic to yourself.
So I just want to add to what Superintendent Serenich said. If you want to have a robust high school and you want to be able to keep your enrollment so that students in Shelton have a lot of opportunities to go to magnet schools, to go to Catholic schools, to go to other private schools. So if you want to have a robust program at the high school level, you can't just let a per pupil ratio dictate your program. You have to offer AP courses, which usually are not going to be, the same as regular classes. You have to offer advanced science courses, advanced journalism, for example. Those electives have lower number of students, but in order to do that, that's how you keep students in our school district. Music programs often are not going to have a 20-to-1 ratio. They're going to have lower numbers, but those are the kinds of courses that keep students in Shelton. Thank you.
And one question again, I'm sorry. So basically, I've been reading the news everywhere that the mayor's agreed to or is willing to give you guys $135,000 I'm sorry, excuse me. So if the mayor gives you $135,000, what jobs will you have to cut? Because that's basically not what you're asking for.
I don't think we're able to answer that question at this time. I mean, we know that dollar amount would require us to make some cuts, but we have not factored in on the cost or the impact of the cuts that we would have to make at this time.
One last question, Ken. Thank you. A lot of parents have been coming to me and saying, pay to play. It's been tough on them. Pandemic, they've lost their jobs. There's only one, person in the house bringing in a paycheck. What funding do you need if we want to get rid of pay to play?
I'm going to defer. Rick, do you have the total cost for pay to play? Rick Belden can answer the total cost for pay to play and what it's budgeted.
Thank you.
Rick Belden, Director of Finance. Included in our budget book, tab A, on page 5, is all the revenues, and we are expecting to receive $220,000 in the pay to participate fund for 2021-22. That helps to offset the cost of sports and extracurriculars. It doesn't cover the entire cost. So the answer to your question will be $220,000.
So if we had to give you $220,000, that means a parent would not have to pay to play. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Ken.
You're welcome.
Anything else, got any questions?
And if you like, I can include, this enrollment sheet. I don't have copies of it, but I can include it in the packet for the roll record if you'd like. Okay.
So if I may,
Yeah.
Mr. President, I was,
Oh, you want the mic?
I'll take, thank you very much. No,
And you're
thank you very much. The presentation was
You're so
excellent.
gentle.
Since we've known each other, how many years now? Anyways, the presentation was excellent. I appreciate you bringing all the information to us. It's excellent. I'm very thrilled that you've got all the, and I give Rick a lot of the credit for finding the funds from the state for all the buildings and rehabs we've done over the years and getting that money back. That was a tremendous job to get that done. In the audit, it says $150,000 for cabling. To me, that sounds almost not enough, to be quite honest with you, okay? Because knowing that we did the cabling, I was at St. Joseph's, and the parents did that, and it was an amazing proposition, work day. Mr. English President English worked on that, did a lot of work with that group. Does any of this tie into any of the city information, or it's only the school system, any of this audit?
This would only be for...
Just for schools?
For the school buildings.
Okay,
Correct.
good to hear. Your Chromebook cost, because I now work in a school where we bought 500 Chromebooks this year. The cost of Chromebooks is $404. That includes the book itself, it includes warranties for 5 years or something like that?
That is correct.
3 years. Thanks, Rick. And, all right, that's good. And are they a special Chromebook or just a simple Chromebook, do you know?
Well,
Can you top of your head?
we look to try to get the most efficient, long-lasting Chromebook that we can get when we make the investment. Again, technology is updated time and time again, and we'll be looking at estimates and putting it out to bid and trying to get the best quality because our technology director, Glenn Newman, is very good at looking at this, and he will find for us the Chromebook that'll have the longest lifespan and durability for our students. And if I could just answer your question about the $150,000 with cabling, that's an estimated cost, and that's actually on the higher end. We believe it would be less than that, and mostly because cabling in the past versus what we do now is less cables, and cables are cheaper than they were when we originally did it. So, because with the more Wi-Fi, you have less cabling to do, and what cables can do nowadays versus the cables that you've put in.
Carry more information.
Correct.
Good. Okay. The other thing is, I'm looking at the annual licensing, and murky Wi-Fi. Now, is this $45,000 first year? Then we buy the 76 after that, or do we have to pay for or they all, or do we buy one? I'm a little.
So these are licensings that we will have to maintain.
Okay.
Over years to prevent the circumstance that we currently are in with having to do an audit in this major upgrade.
Okay,
It's part of the process. Once we upgrade, if we input these licensing fees, we will naturally be upgrading and monitoring the system over time to not put us into a circumstance where we'll have to do a major audit and then look for a multi-million-dollar project.
So the first year.
Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
The first year is $45,000 plus, obviously.
Correct.
Then 3 years later, we'll pay the 76, or is it the next year?
That's the cost after 3 years.
After 3 years.
Yep.
Okay. Per year or one time?
It's per year.
Okay, per year.
And then the $78,000 is every 5 years we have to pay that.
That I
So we
caught on
can
to.
budget that number over 5 years.
Okay.
So it's not just like in a 5-year span, we have to come up with $78,000.
Right.
We can manage it and spread it over the course of 5 years, but every 5 years, we have to pay that $78,000 cost.
And the company that, you've got a company that will do all this work for you?
Correct.
Okay, so we've got somebody already ready to do it. We don't have to go audit it or go off another bid or anything like that?
Nope, all that work has been done.
Excellent.
So
Okay.
the only question I have about the licensing, typically, I mean, I work in a huge healthcare organization, 77,000 employees, and typically when we do our annual licensing, it goes down with the number of years you have a contract with this particular company. So that just confuses me. Why is it going up?
Carl, do you want to help support that? Because I know it's one of the technology aspects.
The one fee is $78,000 for every 5 years, so.
No, that one, I'm
No,
asking
she's
about.
talking about after the
So
first year in the, yeah.
Well, the initial is 45,000. Usually it's the other way around. The initial is the bulk of the money, and then usually with multi-years, it goes down. I'm just confused.
Yeah, we'd have to look at the details of the contract.
Oh, okay.
But-
I think, the first year is actually subsidized by the cost of the audit
Okay.
and the initial $1 million expense.
Please understand, I don't think the prices are bad, I just
No,
want
me
you to
neither.
know how they go.
I just wanted,
Yes, I don't think they're bad.
I wanted to understand.
And it's my understanding, I didn't want to speak out of turn, that's why I was kind of deferring
Yeah.
to Carl as well, but it's my understanding in the third year, because the anticipated, technology costs
Will be
increase.
more- Yeah, that's what I figured it was,
The
but,
cost of a certain device and cabling and support is not gonna be the same price 3 years down the line.
yeah, usually when you
they-
stay with the same company, they usually kind of give you a deal.
But they're
That was
looking at, what their projected costs are gonna be 3 years
Understood.
from now
Okay.
for that service.
The audit is already done, everything, this is all complete?
It's all done,
Yep.
Okay.
correct.
Right.
And actually,
Very good.
we're planning on having an executive session to answer detailed questions like that, because there's security, aspects of that cost.
Right, Ken had.
So this, how long will it take to implement all of this? If you said go tomorrow, would it be done? How would it be done?
Well,
4 months, 6 months?
There are
Ready for
stages
the
that
next
have
year?
to be done, but we're hoping to get this work, if we can get it implemented with this new grant coming in, it'll all be summer work to implement for the new
So
school.
September 1st or whatever it is,
Yep.
school it will be ready. All right, that's excellent. That's excellent. And the other question was, will it will be one-on-one Chromebooks for everybody at this point in time? And the kindergartners get something else, is my understanding.
So with that being said, because I want to make sure that we understand what one-to-one means. So we currently have one-to-one in grades 5 through up, for the whole sole purposes of, at that particular age, we're identifying that kids can take responsibility of transporting that device to and from school and so on. We're increasing the devices in our K to 4 to have availability to one-to-one, but we do not have a plan at this time to send home devices
Well, they're not gonna take them home.
with young children. No, because we just
Yeah.
don't, we're worried about the,
loss.
that responsibility level and having a kindergartner drop their Chromebook down the bus stairs, and yes, and.
Gloves and can't get home, so I understand.
So, we've increased devices to enable our schools to have devices for all students, but I just want to make sure that the public understands they
Not
shouldn't
gonna go home with them.
They shouldn't expect their first grader to come home with a Chromebook on the first day of school, so.
But they'll have it in school, so they'll be there.
Absolutely. And as students get older, even in those primary grades, we would even look at, our fourth graders and possibly for short-term assignments and stuff like that to teach that responsibility. But we do have a process by which we want to teach responsibility and be cautious of the equipment that we're giving our young children.
Is there any document that has to be signed by the parents saying they're responsible, the ones that are going home?
There is, absolutely. We have policies the Board of Ed has written for all those.
If you give me just the rough information on it, are they responsible for the whole payment or just for the insurance payment of it, or what?
They do an insurance payment, that helps, and then there's estimated costs based on the damage done to the actual Chromebook in terms of a complete replacement, or is it just a cracked screen, or so on and so forth. What we can cover under warranty, what can be done in-house, or what may have to be totally replaced.
Excellent. All right.
So it's basically, their cost is like a deductible relative
Yeah.
to the cost that's gonna be paid. Yep.
I've got 30 to send out tomorrow, so I know. All right. Thank you so much,
You're welcome.
everyone from the board and people who are supporting the board.
Okay. I'll leave you with this thought. We started the budget season with the mayor.
Up to the mic.
John.
Up to the mic.
We started the budget
Yeah, that's better.
Relax.
I'm not worried about that crap.
He's fascinated.
We started the budget season with the mayor presenting his budget. And I don't know if you have a copy of those minutes. They are available on the city website. And I just want to share a couple of things with you from that meeting. So, we put this in perspective. One of the things the mayor said was this budget, and I'm quoting, "This budget reflects a modest increase for the Board of Education, and at some time before final adoption, the Board of Aldermen can and will modify that number once clarification on the use of federal stimulus monies to the tune of some $6 million has been made, or other monies have been made available." So you see, that comment, and why I felt this was so important to understand, and to do it in the order that we did it. And I think that's fine. Another point he made, I think you should know and reflect on if we are now updating the school system's automated bus routing program. And this is the school system's responsibility, what you've done, you've taken on, and I believe you told me you paid for it. And once we're able to consolidate routes, we're going to affect some savings. And he made the comment here, those savings are going to will go directly back to the Board of Education. So, I was glad to see those things in his comments. But I think we've got to the point where we can work on the decisions now. And we thank you very much for coming and presenting and enlightening us.
President Ongway, if I may, can I just ask one follow-up? Just because, first of all, thank you for this meeting. I've been to several of these. I think this is one of the more productive, ones that feel like we're actually moving forward, so I appreciate that. Just piggybacking on what you just said, I'm curious, now that we've had the opportunity to have this conversation and each of the aldermen and alderwomen have had the chance to ask questions, at this point, is there anything that you can see that would prevent the city from fully funding the education?
I can't answer that because I'm one of 8.
We're all here. I'm just curious what your general thought is.
I can't make a commitment at this point. We work together and we work with the mayor as well. Everybody works together, and we'll just we know what the assignment is. We made a statement publicly that we've got to work hard to try and meet your goals, and that's what we're going to do. So, no further questions from anybody.
Can I just say one thing? I know when
ID yourself first, okay?
Oh, sure. This is Diana Meyer from the Board of Ed. This I thought was really productive. This is my first chance to sit with all of you, and I really hope this isn't an annual thing. I hope it's more often, because I know with the last board, I believe, you did quarterly meetings, and I really hope now that, the craziness of the pandemic is over, that we can all sit at a table and talk more often, if you would be willing to do that.
I faithfully read your finance committee meeting minutes and watch that and ask questions if I've got any. I've been watching the reimbursement activity, and I read carefully what you do. So, there's not much I can do or say or to influence it. So far, you guys have been doing a good job, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John, if I may say something, Diane, I don't know I think that our superintendent has developed a good rapport with President Anglais, and
and with the mayor as well.
And the mayor, yes. But the conversation tends to maybe, I don't want to say weekly, but at least a few times a month, and I think they're developing a very positive relationship together, and that in itself is going to
bring us, I think, all closer as a unit.
We have to understand each other's needs.
Yeah.
And there's no better way to do it than to pick up the phone and call and talk directly. You don't always do this in a public meeting.
Right.
You know what I mean? You have to get what's really going on with behind the scenes.
Mhm.
So we're here if you want us.
Right.
Thank you.
But, no, I appreciate you all coming out, and, I wish you a nice summer, and let's hope that we come to a very positive conclusion.
And we wish you a happy budget.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you. We're gonna call the meeting.
Call the meeting adjourned.
Call the meeting done.
Motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So ordered unanimously. At 7